Tell us the worst advice you received.
The worst advice I have ever received is not to pursue my passion.
Tell us about the hardest season for you as a lawyer.
Well, it's not a season, it's a year. It's a personal story.
What keeps you up at night when it comes to AI?
The greatest risk is not that AI is going to replace lawyers. The greatest risk is among those people who are doing it.
In 2 to 3 years, how do you see the job of a GC changing with the AI?
The GC of, quote, the future isn't going to be the legal advisor. The GC of the next 2 to 3 years of the future is going to be a business operator who delivers legal services. I firmly believe that.
Do you coach your son who is a lawyer?
Well, try not to. And you're going to continue to hook your wagon to the hourly billing rate for the next 3, 5, 10 years. I think you got to really get hip and thigh attached to the finance team. You know, in order for me to have $1 to spend, the business team has to generate $30 in revenue. 30.
If you were a 26-year-old, how would you restart your career in 2026?
I still want to be a doctor.
Smolik, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Mark, we have done a podcast with General Counsels of almost 60 plus companies across US. And beautiful things came out from them and from their wisdom. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with you as well. You are heading the Department of Law at DHL from last so many years. And I've read so many articles, so many posts that you put on LinkedIn. Beautiful perspective on so many things. I'm very excited to talk to you about all those things. One of the things I want to first of all touch base with you is, was becoming a general counsel at DHL, was it planned or not planned?
No, it wasn't planned. Okay. Briefly told, Amit, I wouldn't be standing here having this opportunity to chat with you if I had really had the opportunity to pursue what I thought was my passion when I was in undergrad. And that was, I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
But my guidance counselor at the university that I attended, who was a lawyer and headed up the traditional political science department, said, it's never going to happen. She was that blunt. She said, your grades in chemistry and biology are just so-so. And your likelihood of you getting into even a respectable medical school are pretty low. So I think you ought to be a lawyer. And of course, here I am, all these years later, having had the opportunity to practice law. But I did have an opportunity early on working not only through the end of high school, but also university to work construction. And throughout that, I came across an awful lot of people that I work with, particularly in construction, who had legal issues and problems. I decided ultimately I wanted to pursue law. Got out of law school, joined a law firm, and I won't go through every one of the details, but I had the opportunity while I was a lawyer at a small law firm to represent a lot of the guys that I used to work with in construction. And it turned out pretty lucrative for me. I had an opportunity to build a pretty big client base, but an opportunity came up for me to join the Sherwin-Williams Company, which is headquartered in Cleveland, which is where I was born and raised. And I sat down on an old-fashioned typewriter and I called my wife on an old landline and I said, I'm going to be coming home late because I'm going to go type up a resume. And 2 months later, I was working for Sherwin-Williams. So that began my in-house journey and I've never looked back since then.
Beautiful, beautiful, and beautiful story, Mark. So what kind of lawyer should choose a law firm and what kind of lawyer should choose an in-house?
Well, I'm not so sure there's a particular lawyer that should pursue either coming right out of the gate, but let me approach your question from 2 different perspectives. Because traditionally, if not historically, a lot of students that ended up graduating from law school, and I would say the vast majority of them, ended up going to a law firm where they would cut their teeth. And for 3 or 4 or 5 years would evaluate, is this life the life for me? Now, if you were at a large New York firm, that was a very, very different way of life than if you were with a very small entrepreneurial firm somewhere in Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Cincinnati, wherever it might be in the United States, right? But it's about that 3 to 5 years, sometimes 7-year period. There are a lot of those students now becoming ingrained associates at law firms would decide, well, maybe I want to explore working in-house. Now, when I went that route in 1990, it was a very untraditional route. Of course, I was a lawyer for 3 years at the time, but I can remember some of the lawyers with whom I had worked that were partners, not just at the firm that I was at, but others, Amit, had told me, why would you ever do that? That's such a non-traditional route. But that's the route that we took. And it was one that for me, I said, well, if it's a route that doesn't end up to be the right one for me, I can always seek to go back into the law firm setting. But it ended up being the right path for me. But today, it's very, very different. Very different. I am for the first time, and I did for the first time about 8 years ago, hire a number of students right out of school. And we groomed them to uh, not only engage with our team, become very aligned with the business, but those folks who have continued to advance their careers at the organization are doing great. Some have moved on to more senior positions in other organizations, but there's more companies that are pursuing more recent graduates than there ever were in the past.
Why?
Very because of more and more work that is going to outside counsel, more and more GCs or CLOs are making decisions that we're not going to pay for first year or second year associates. They're still an absolutely necessary resource to have. And we have found a great deal of success in hiring those folks right within our own organization.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, beautiful. When you're grooming people, grooming younger lawyers, tell us, how does a good lawyer become a great general counsel?
Well, I think the most important thing for people to understand, whether it is as a young lawyer who wants to become a general counsel or a young accountant that wants to become a partner at a firm, realize one thing. The most important asset that you carry around with you day in and day out that you did absolutely nothing to earn and you can never shed is your name. And there's a heading of what is in a name. And if you really want to succeed to that general counsel, CLO level, then head of a marketing firm, whatever it may be, you have to realize that your name precedes you in everything that you do. And that people's perception of you is their reality. So you need to understand that people who are going to be making decisions about your career sometimes won't be operating on all of the facts. They'll be operating on your perception. Just think about how things work in just everyday life. Whether you're in a social environment, you go to church, professional environment, whatever it may be, all of us evaluate people based on first impressions. And sometimes those are lasting impressions. So never forget that the perception of you is something that sometimes is very lingering and can last a career. So as you begin to build that perception, there's a couple of things that I think are the most important for anybody, especially if they want to become that trusted GC. Do what you say when you say you're going to do it. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, then it is incumbent on you to make sure it happens when you say. And if there's a reason it doesn't, be proactive about it and communicate effectively. That's number one. Number two, never lose sight of the importance of integrity. Even when doing the right thing is sometimes the most difficult thing to do. And even when nobody is looking, never lose sight of your moral compass. Those are things that are going to guide you. You can learn the law all along the way, but I have never been in any interview for any position in my entire career where somebody was more impressed by what I knew about the law, which is oftentimes just a little bit. They were sizing me up with regard to, is this guy going to be a good cultural fit? Do I feel I could work with him effectively, a team member? And is he aligned with the values that I believe are important to succeed? So it is more those soft skills than it is the hard skills, Amit, that are really, in my opinion, going to put you on a sustainable path to at least having a viable shot of achieving that GC role.
Beautiful. That's a very, very unique answer. We heard all kind of different answers in the past. What you are saying is, those 2 points which you mentioned, they all again link to reputation. What your reputation precedes you. So one of the things I learned in my early career was, if you lose money, you lost nothing. If you lose health, you've lost something. If you lose your reputation, you lost everything.
You lost everything.
And when you lost everything, it doesn't mean that you can't rebuild. You can rebuild it, but it will take a lot of time because somebody said you lose you lose trust in buckets and you earn in drops.
You're right.
So
Really looking at it.
yeah. So yes, absolutely correct. And I'm glad you emphasize on this and people are listening to this very important concept of doing what you say and being proactive about it when you're not able to do it and maintain your integrity because the reputation precedes you. Beautiful. Mark, you mentioned a beautiful thing about one of the articles you wrote about the boldest move leaders can make now. And you mentioned in that is courage. I don't want to go into the article. The article was about AI, but I want to understand the courage aspect from you. How can lawyers build courage? How?
I'm going to give you an answer, but I'm also going to kind of put the ball on tee, so to speak, for the answer. When we go through law school, we are taught to be risk adverse. We are taught the theory of the law. We're taught the implications of what happens if we violate that theory of the law. And then we're tested on it. What would be the outcome, right? But what is missing from that mix is, that might be the theory of the law, but what's the reality? And where is the balance? And how do you seek that balance, particularly when you've got a complicated matter in front of you? So in many regards, when I look at some of the most, and I'm going to put a little bit of a different twist on your question, some of the most important aspects of the members of my team, whether they're junior or they are more senior, it is those folks that are sitting in a meeting on a virtual call, whatever it may be, who are very actively listening to the discussion that is taking place and who are listening most oftentimes, whether you're in-house or at a law firm, to business people debate a business decision. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, if they go down that path, here's are the various risks. Now, let me tell you what is an absolute failure for any lawyer at any level, where you're listening to a discussion among business people and they ask you your opinion with regard to the decision that they want to make. And you say, there's a risk if you could do that because this agency or this competitor may sue you. Of course they could. Anybody could sue anybody for anything in the United States. The challenge that you have is explaining what that risk is in terms that the business can understand it. And that is where I see so many lawyers completely trip over themselves. They said, there is a risk, and they stop. And yet the client, the business person are looking at them to guide them through that decision. I can't tell you how many times I have had a discussion over the course of my career that says, look, I understand what you're seeking to do, and the role of a lawyer is to get you to yes. I firmly believe that. Now, I'll talk a little bit later about what I view my most important role in the organization to be. But you have to communicate to people how they can achieve their objectives. It is a rarity that they're seeking to do something that would egregiously run afoul of a company policy, a client policy, or a law rule or regulation. But you help them get that to yes. I can remember some of the first discussions I had in DHL, where I was saying many, many years ago, part of my job is to get you to yes. And that created a perception. This guy wants to help us. And everybody on my team is of the same point of view on that. So it's a little bit of a different way of answering your question. But I want people that are listening, especially if you are continuing to grow and develop in your career, that the most important thing is to help your client achieve its objectives and never lose sight of it. Never be afraid, never have the courage to tell somebody, I hear what you're saying, but if you twist and you turn and you do things a little bit differently, I can assure you that many of the risks that you will address are going to be significantly less than if you just continue to go down the path. When it comes to courage in and of itself, don't be afraid to make a decision. I have found that oftentimes a lot of business folks, especially if you're working inside a corporation, turn to the lawyers to help them make the decision. Not to just say, here's what the risk is. They really don't know what to do. And don't be afraid to say, this is what I would do if I were in your shoes. And behind the scenes, they are in their own mind processing, okay, good. I'm aligned with him or her. And if they need to communicate up the chain to others, they can say, look, I've conferred with Mark or Allison on his team, and they're aligned with what we want to do from there. Um, and the last thing I want to say with regard to courage is don't be afraid to speak up. Every one of us have been in a meeting, and we have heard people talk about different issues, and people go around and people will ask, especially if they're leading a meeting, does anybody have anything to say? And I can't tell you how many times I have experienced one of my particularly younger lawyers not say anything because they're afraid that they're not going to say the right thing. Just open your mouth. Don't be afraid to do so. You got a point of view. I can't tell you how many times I have found myself not being active enough in raising my hand to share a point of view, only to hear somebody else share it. I says, well, okay. So he beat me to the point. Open your mouth. Share that's why they hired you.
Mm, beautiful. Yes, and that's where the courage comes in to speak up and say what you want to say, because you're thinking that you basically doubt your doubts and fear your fears. Have faith in yourself, and so faith over fear. Approach things with faith and not with fear. I think those are the things which you're saying, and beautiful way of saying it, Mark. Uh, Mark, tell us, you have been a lawyer for a very long time, and we all are learning from experience. Tell us about the hardest season for you as a lawyer, and what did it teach you?
Well, this is going to be a different answer. I can tell you this. Well, it's not a season, it's a year. It's a personal story. But it also is a story, the end of which taught me my greatest lesson as a leader of a department, as a general counsel, CLO, and as a person. 2017, I took a trip to Brazil, and I have been to Brazil now 98 times over the course of my career. But I got off on an airplane, and my right ankle was swollen. I kind of tripped, and I thought, well, maybe I sprained my ankle. Put some ice on it. It didn't go away. Took another trip a few weeks later to Brazil. Same thing. Got off the airplane. My right ankle was swollen. So I go to the doctor. The doctor said, I don't know. How old were you? 2017. So this is 9 years ago. I was 54 years old. Okay. At the time. Doctor gives me some medication. I take it. Goes away. 3 weeks later, comes back. Gives me some more medication. Goes away. Comes back. Anyway, we go through some testing. And sure enough, somewhere at some point in time, I had picked up some virus or bacteria that had actually settled in my bone marrow. And I was diagnosed with something called alpha light chain amyloidosis. I won't get into the details behind it, but it's not good. And 65 rounds of chemo later, I was, in many regards, put into remission. But along the way, this is the journey that was perhaps the most impactful for my team. I had debated whether or not I was just going to completely open up the kimono and tell people at the organization what was going on. I told my board, I said, this is what's going on. And if you are in your own way seeking insight at an annual physical, these are the things that you need to ask them to test you for. But I learned the hard way. So I told the board what I was diagnosed with. I told the board what's going to happen. And I said, ultimately, I'm going to have a bone marrow transplant, and this is going to be in May of 2018. I told my team, starting with the leadership team and everybody else. And as I went back and forth to chemo for that first few months, I had to interrupt my work schedule. But here's the thing that really was among the most humbling of experiences. I had had the good fortune of building my team from 5 to now 91 people. I wasn't that large in 2017. My leadership team understood every role and responsibility that they needed to take the task. They took my job, parceled it up, and made sure that everything that needed to happen during that period of time was handled. Now, ultimately, I got to the point where I was going to have and did have that bone marrow transplant, May of 2018, and I was off for 4 months. And I told the board. And my team, during that 4-month period of time, did everything they needed to do to make sure that the department was running effectively, and probably did a better job. than when I was there. But they really did a phenomenal job. And when I came back, first of all, I called in my first board meeting, Amit, and there's my chair. It was empty. And my CEO said, "Welcome back." And then he said some words that summed up everything that had been going on for a year and a half. We never missed a beat. And in his perception, even though his CLO was gone for months at a time and for weeks at a time during all of this chemo, everything operated to his expectation. And that was huge for me. So my life lesson is, first of all, have the courage to share with people you are a human. And don't be afraid to tell them, here's what I'm going through, and here's how I'm going to handle it, and here's what I need from you. Now, when you're on the team, a junior member of my team, you might be intimidated to have that, but don't. You have to make sure that you understand the culture of the organization. But I've found it not only wonderfully exhilarating for me personally, but also professionally because of how effective the team was in managing through all that. Now, I ended up going through the 65 rounds of chemo, and there were some other things, but here I am many, many years later. And if I didn't tell you this, you never would have known it. Fortunately, all of the medical treatments have worked, and I am back to where I needed to be. You're working in the capacity at the company, but that was the most difficult thing for me to go through, not only personally, but also there was a great deal of fear. What is this going to mean for me professionally? But when he said, "Welcome back, we never missed a beat," boy, oh boy, oh boy. That was the greatest words I could have heard.
Beautiful.
So long-winded answer, but that's the challenge for me.
I've learned so much from this answer, Mark. What you're touching upon is deep. You're saying it's okay to be vulnerable in front of your team. It's okay to share your pain. And the best thing you said was the job of the leader is not just to be a good leader, but to create leaders. When you were off for your medical uh, uh, fixation, you had created so many leaders under you who could do the job, and your CEO was not missing, which is good. A lot of lawyers fear that if they're gonna teach everything that they know, they will become redundant. And that's why you need the courage of becoming redundant and creating leaders who are better than you. And lawyers need to learn that from you a lot, where you can be not there for months, but still things can run without you. That's so beautiful. That should be the goal of everyone. Become redundant.
But beautiful. Know this lesson coming out of it, because I did talk to my CFO about it. He and I got to be pretty close friends, professional friends, of course. And he said, "Hey, look, you're a good lawyer, but you're not the most brilliant lawyer." And as two guys can just joke with each other. I said, "I know that. That's why I surround myself with people a lot smarter than me." And he said, when we evaluate your opportunity for growth, we're not looking at you as a lawyer. We're looking at you as to how you approach problems and challenges and your leadership capability. We could put any lawyer in as GC and just say, go do the legal stuff. But it's difficult to find the person who's really going to take seriously the leadership of people, make sure you've got the team behind you. And many of my own personal reviews where I have talked to other members of the board, I've said, look, you got a great team. You're leading a great team. And for me, it's kind of like sitting in the dugout for a championship baseball team and just watching everybody do what they do on the field. And that's an exhilarating experience in and of itself.
Beautiful. I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn where one of your colleagues, Elaine, joined a company called Safe Light. You're congratulating that Safe Light is in beautiful hands. They got a gem, whereas you lost a star. That's a beautiful way if somebody leaves your team. I have never done this. I'm going to use that if somebody leave my teams. If they leave my team, tell us your leadership style. What is your leadership style?
Well, by now, those of you that are listening are, okay, this guy is who he is. My style is first and foremost, I never lose sight of my roots and what I came for. I mean, I grew up in a great family. We didn't have a whole heck of a lot, but I never lost sight of the value of hard work and what have you. My leadership style is people first. A lot of people say that. But when people are interviewing with the company, or either to work in my department, or especially if they're working somewhere else, and they say, tell me a little bit about the culture. And I said, well, if you come to work with us, you need to understand that you are, depending on your status of life, you are a mother or a father first. You are somebody's spouse. You are somebody's sibling, somebody's cousin, somebody's friend, somebody's spiritual advisor. And then at somewhere down the line, you are DHL. If you don't have those first priorities right, then your opportunity to really drive value in a balanced environment for us is probably going to be limited. And that is very, very true. I mean, in my organization, we celebrate birthdays every month. We celebrate anniversaries. People get Christmas cards from me. People get a list of their achievements throughout the years, and we celebrate those successes. We could do more than we are, but we go to great lengths to make sure that the culture that we are building is one where the grass is green on the DHL side of the fence, and people leave. They leave for opportunities that we cannot offer to them here. Elaine Dar is a great example. But there were 3 senior members of my team who preceded her, who left to become generals counsel of other companies. Elaine just happened to be one of my first hires 14 years ago. She worked her way through the organization. She actually left legal. And when I told her, we're going to move you out of legal, she thought she was being fired, but we put her in charge of the operations for one of our businesses, and she did wonderfully successful. And she came back with that experience back into legal and just did wonderful things here as well. But when the opportunity for Safe Flight opened up, it was a very unique, one of a kind experience. Now, full disclosure, because people probably Googling me as they're listening, I used to be the chief legal officer for Safe Flight before I came to DHL. So it's ironic that she was back where I came from and spent almost 7 years, but it's an opportunity for her to advance her career with a great organization that is literally 2 miles that way, right over that hill. And she and I continue to connect, and it's great for her to now have some experience working for folks that I used to work for as well. So put that one under the heading of a small world, because it really is a small world there.
It is beautiful. One thing I learned, Mark, was mistakes don't define us, they refine us. What mistakes did you make that we can learn from?
Oh gosh, I made a lot of mistakes. And you're right, they don't define us. But how you handle those mistakes will define you. Cover them up, oh, that's a problem. But that probably cuts across the DNA of somebody who says, you know what, I'm a person of my word, and I'm going to make sure I manage to perception with folks, et cetera. I made a big mistake at SafeLight, and we were getting ready to sell the company. Now, I brought to SafeLight a lot of merger and acquisition experience working at Sherwin-Williams, a lot of it. So much so that, yeah, I could do multiple complicated deals on my own. And I bit off more than I could chew. I hired an external law firm, but we pushed most of the work internally through the team. And the other side that was acquiring us did not. They went more of the traditional route, and I just about buried myself, if not killed myself. And I don't mean that figuratively, burying myself in the work, where it just got to the point where we got through it. But when I debriefed, I said that was a decision, that was the wrong decision because of the volume of work that was needed to sell a company of that size. There have been plenty of other mistakes along the way. And the ones that have come back to really bite me, if not kind of kick me in the side, is when I have gone against my gut decision. You know, when you meet somebody and you're interviewing and say, boy, this person's got it. And I don't know what it is. I don't know how to define it, but they've got something there that is attracting me to continue to want to talk to them. But when I have gone against my own intuition and made decisions, particularly hiring decisions, where I've said, I'm not so sure that they're the right fit for this role, but I've listened to somebody convince me. It's always been my decision. So for me, sticking to my intuition, my gut instincts, that kind of internal visceral voice that is talking to you saying, hey, look, this is something that uh, is the right decision or the wrong decision. When I violate that, it's mistakes.
I've learned this is a beautiful thing, Mark, and I've learned that gut is a second brain, okay, or is a second heart, and it develops with age. As you become more wise, as you advance in your age, your gut develops. Is that true for you?
Oh, it's definitely true, especially as I get older, right? With age comes wisdom. And I only wish that the very, very young lawyer in myself recognizes that it's okay to say, I don't know. I mean, gosh, we want to prove how smart we are. We want to be the white knight that comes in to save the day. And you realize that, geez, you might be riding a horse, but you have no armor. And it's okay to say, you know what, I'll get back to you. I got to check. And what have you. And I made some of those mistakes early on in my career, but no more. You'll learn from those.
Okay. Tell us the best advice you ever got, Mark.
It's twofold. Do what you say when you say you're going to do it. Never lose sight of that. I learned that early on. And the other one is from my CFO who recently retired, who about 10 years ago said, manage to perception. I was struggling for a while with a new mandate from our CEO who long ago retired, not recently, but long ago retired, when he instructed every member of the board was to come into the boardroom to provide insight into their function of the business with one piece of paper, 4 squares on it, all of your data. And if you were a business, it was easy. What was your revenue? What were your expenses, et cetera? And those changed every month. And if you were HR, that changed every month. But legal doesn't change every month. Sometimes it doesn't change every 6 months. So a lot of my data was stale. I mean, what do I report on? And at this point in time, there's a lot of things that were being discussed in the legal industry by scholars of, report on metrics that matter. Well, nobody decided or nobody really focused on matters to whom? To the lawyers, to the CLO, or to the business. So what I was reporting on as months went by, I saw people on their phones not paying attention. I don't blame them. It was stale. And my CFO said, look, I heard what the CEO said. Stop reporting. Manage to perception. Success for you and for anybody on your team is when you walk out of a meeting with us or we hang up on a phone call with you and we turn to each other and we say, good hire. That is something that is more valuable than gold to you because you've created a perception in our minds that you are adding value to the organization. We don't care that you've got 100 lawsuits. We care that you have an approach to deal with them effectively and you're doing everything that you can to help us maximize the profitability of the company. And that is advice that I've never forgotten.
Beautiful. Very, very, very powerful. Very powerful. Tell us the worst advice you received.
The worst advice that I have ever received from anybody is not to pursue my passion. I really struggled with that decision. Medical school, law school, medical school, law school. When my guidance counselor at university said, you're never going to get into medical school, I accepted that. And here I am a whole lot of years later, not regretting it, but disappointed that I didn't pursue it anyway. I may never have been successful in doing it, but there is still a huge part of me that although I am wonderfully and eternally grateful for everything that's been gifted to me throughout the course of my career, I still want to be a doctor. So I went against every belief that I had, every goal that I had at the time. Do I look back and regret it? No. I mean, absolutely wonderful. Our oldest son is now a partner at a law firm. He pursued the route. He's doing very, very well, but there's still a little part of me that says, I wonder what it would be like if I had pursued the medical profession.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Tell us, how has your relationship with money evolved over time?
Well, personally, um, having grown up at a time where if you had $3, you had a lot of money. And I want to age myself here, folks. Gasoline was 29 cents a gallon. Okay. So $3 was a lot. And the minimum wage was $2.35 an hour. So I grew up in an environment where if you did have some money, you did not just outlandishly spend it, you were frugal with it. I'm very, very fortunate that my spouse, who I met at university many, many years ago, is of the same mindset. We have saved up so that we can have not only a comfortable life for ourselves and our family, but readying for retirement as well. So to a certain extent, live within your means has certainly been important for me. But I want to also answer that from the perspective of the company. In order for me to have $1 to spend, Emmett, just $1. Now, I'm a big law department, so it's not just a few dollars. There's millions of dollars that run through this department. The business team has to generate $30 in revenue. 30. So when somebody comes to me and said, "Oh, that's only going to cost us 10,000." Yeah, it's a de minimis amount of money in a company our size. Times 30. You can begin to do the math. And when you have 100 or 200 of those, they add up. So my people know when they come to me and they're talking about, here's what this is going to cost, they're equating it to the revenue as well. And that is something that has also helped me a great deal within the business environment here as a company, because I'm always equating this back to the financial impact of the company. There's multiple articles that I have written with regard to the cost of external counsel. And I can remember at the law firm where the most expensive lawyer at the firm at the time, this was 1987, folks, was $205 an hour, and I could not believe it. Oh, I'd be happy to pay $205. We just saw an article today in the Wall Street Journal where there's a lawyer in California just saying he's going to announce to his clients he is charging $6,000 an hour for regulatory or telecommunication regulatory advice. But we are on track for some of the AmLaw 25 firms by 2034, based on historical performance, to be charging on average almost $5,000 an hour. And we're going to probably blow by that. So when you look at projects that are involving 10, 20, 100, 1,000 hours, you multiply that by that number, and you go to the business and say, this is what I need to spend, and they then multiply it by 30. It is a significant impact on the business. So all of my people know to tie back what the costs are that they are incurring to the bottom line of the organization so that we can talk of the business. And that has really helped propel us, particularly in the financial community. So the frugality personally has always helped me, but also the business approach to understanding what it takes in order to generate $1 has really helped me within the organization.
I read your article. This is very beautiful, very empowering as well. There's a new topic that we're coming up with. I read your article on hourly rates and how it is changing. And you mentioned just now in 2034, it will be $6,000 per hour. Some lawyers are charging $6,000 per hour already in 2026. Do you think general counsel and in-house counsel should stop buying hours and start buying outcomes?
Well, no, not yet. Here's why. My first continuing legal education seminar, 1988, Cleveland, Ohio, was on the relationship between external and internal counsel. People were talking about, hey, could we go to value building? Oh my gosh, we're talking about that 37 years later. Same thing. It's just that today the environment has changed. And the reason it's changed is because more and more organizations of every level are putting in charge of legal people who are business focused and more entrepreneurial. It is not just let's go to legal if we absolutely have to. They go back and they sit in their corner. These are folks, and I'm seeing this more and more with all the GCs that I deal with, that they're being hired for their business acumen. And I think that is great. That is going to help shift some of these dynamics. But when you look at the sell side of the legal industry, i.e., the law firm, they perform services for us that are tremendously valuable, right? But they are built on a historical operating model that is misaligned with what we would like to see as the buyers of services. And that is leveraging new approaches, new ways of thinking, new technology, AI, to help deliver services cheaper, faster, and better. But the law firms find themselves, well, I can't really do that because everything that is here is based on the hourly billing rate. So you've got an inefficient model on the one hand, right? That is trying to meet the efficiencies on the buy side. And at some point in time, there'll be a reckoning. It's going to take a little bit of time. I do believe that the top of the Am Law 25 law firms will continue to bill as they do, but the company litigation, massive bankruptcies, massive transactions on an hourly basis. But boy, if you're below Am Law 25 and you're going to continue to hook your wagon to the hourly billing rate for the next 3, 5, 10 years, I think you got a rude awakening because more and more buyers are pushing for change. We want to see value-based billing. Boy, the accounting industry figured that out 20 years ago, right? What was the big, well, it was the Big 10, Big 6, Big 4. They build on the hourly basis. Now they bill on the value basis largely. And that's what I think ultimately we will get to, some form of in legal. It's just going to take some time.
Brilliant. Let's talk a bit about IP and legal. We have spoken to a lot of general counsel and a lot of companies. Where do you think large companies waste money on IP in general?
When it comes to intellectual property, I think from a lawyer's perspective, I don't think that I am in the best position to answer your question. And here's why. I can guide the company, so too can my team with regard to cybersecurity incidents. We can guide them through, here are some of the things that you need to do administratively from a regulatory perspective if you're going to try to protect new trademark technologies or what have you. But in the instances where I have seen companies trip up, not fail, but trip up, is when the business says we have a need. Somebody in IT said, oh, we have a way of filling that need. And then others in the organization are not involved. Legal doesn't get involved until the end of it. And I've seen some instances, fortunately not at DHL, where IT has gone down a path and said, this is what we're doing. We've developed this software. And sure enough, you find out, wait a minute, you have inherent components that you don't own. You have lifted them off of XYZ site or what have you. So you don't involve your legal department early on. You can find yourself in a world of hurt. But I just don't have enough examples or experience to be able to talk to you effectively about that.
Yeah, how does a large company like DHL approach litigations?
Well, we have a lot of it. And it won't come as a surprise because it's public knowledge that some of the most difficult jurisdictions in which to operate, for example, from a labor environment, are Japan and Brazil. And in Brazil in particular, it's not unusual for a company of our size to have thousands of labor claims just because it's very pro-employee down there. When it comes to litigation, we take an approach, especially if it is large class action litigation, that the most important discussion to have right out of the gate after we talk internally. What are the issues? Who would we use for external counsel on this? Is to get hip and thigh attached to the finance team. Because we have to recognize, and we do recognize, that not only do they have to manage a huge budget and a P&L, but they're part of a larger organization. And even if you're not, there are shareholders that have expectations. And you've got to come in as a legal team and say, look, based on experience, we believe that the amount of money this is going to cost us, all in, defense costs, et cetera, is between X and Y. And that puts the finance team in a position of saying, okay, thank you for identifying that. We will work with our auditors or external advisors to put an appropriate accrual or reserve on that particular matter. So that is number one. And if you don't follow that rule and you bring finance in later, you're going to find yourself regretting that. So remember that rule first and foremost. The second is external counsel. I have had plenty of lawsuits, plenty of claims, plenty of instances where I had to deal with regulators where I don't necessarily have to hire the best of the best, but depending on the environment in which I am operating, for example, without getting into detail, we had a matter with a U.S. regulator, and I had decided that the best thing that I could do is hire the former, but now retired Solicitor General of the United States. I paid it right through the nose for his hourly rate, but he resolved that matter in a matter of months, not years. So that was who you know, and I paid for the value that they brought. So there's a bit of a strategic decision in as well. When I walk into a courtroom on a complicated matter with external counsel, I want people on the other side saying, oh boy, look who we're up against. And they brought in the 18. And that's true. And and if you can afford it, don't be afraid to pay for it because it will pay dividends for you in the long run.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Tell us, shifting our gear to AI, which you are very passionate about, looking at your articles and so much of information you already given to the world. Tell us what keeps you up at night when it comes to AI.
Well, not much yet. Not much yet. We've had an AI initiative now in place. We are into our third year with AI.
Okay.
And the reason for that is dumb luck. I can't be any more honest with you than that. About 15 years ago, we decided that we were going to put in place a document management system. I want to know where all of our information was. And we put it in place. And then we began to organize our data, kind of like an old-fashioned library. Remember when you go in and you pull out a drawer and you find an index card? I said, I want to know where all of our files are. I want all of them to be categorized, corporate matters, M&A matters, et cetera. So we started to organize, but we didn't know what we were actually structuring and tagging our data. We had no idea. So over time, we built this wonderful database. And we started to extract information manually on the stories that it was telling us. It was telling us some compelling stories. And then AI hits, and we're like, holy smokes. What crystal ball were we looking at? We got all the data. Take the AI solution, layer it on top of it, and out comes marvelous results. It's why we have been way ahead of the curve, particularly with regard to the AI initiatives. I think many of the mistakes that people make with regard to AI, and this should keep people up at night, is if they're only beginning to think about what could be the utility of AI for enterprise data, not Claude, not ChatGPT, or whatever solution that you're evaluating, but just how are we going to leverage all the data that we have in our law department? And who are thinking, oh, I'm going to use this AI tool. You are going to completely fall on your face, in my opinion, unless you take a step back and say, I got to get my house in order first. I got to get my data in play so that when I do layer on the AI tools, it can extract information in a meaningful way. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard, especially when I go out and speak in the industry, of somebody coming in and saying, hey, I just bought this new AI tool, but we're finding that it's not working. And then when I talk to them about what is the tool doing for you and what data is it interpreting, they're like, well, we didn't really focus on the data. So they bought the tool, but they can't do anything with it. And that's the point that I think people miss quite a bit. I'd really like to address this, if it'd be okay with you, is the greatest risk I see with regard to AI. The greatest risk is not that AI is going to replace lawyers. Oh, it will to a certain extent, and in limited circumstance. More on that in a moment. I really believe that the greatest risk is among those people who ignore it. Don't. This is the greatest thing to happen, not just to legal, but to business in general. There are now tools that are going to mine data, which is a new gold standard. It's like oil. that are going to help you augment the efficiencies of your team that you could not possibly conceive of. We're finding through some of our AI initiatives that is happening. And we are on a path where it will continue to happen. I have predicted for some of the members of our board that within 3 to 4 years, the lawyers on our team will be 50% more productive, not because of more hours, just because they have tools that are augmenting their productivity. I am seeing that myself in leveraging some of the AI solutions as well. So this is a seismic change for us. I have a bit of a prediction that I think we're going to end up in a bit of a bell curve situation for the next 2 to 3 years, where the middle 60% of law departments will take a bit of a wait and see. 20% will embrace it, and they'll get their data organized. And those are the ones that are going to be super competitive in a hyper competitive environment. And there will be 20% that will say, nah, I don't need to do it. And those are the folks that are going to miss the bus.
Mm-hmm.
On the law firm side, those folks that are in that 20%, I'm not going to adopt it. I don't think that they're going to survive. At 60%, don't wait too long to get on that bus. Even if you just get on and sit in the back and observe what's going on, to learn as much as you can about how to effectively leverage AI first through your data, get your house in order. And then once you have that house in order, I think you're going to be sitting in the front of that bus, glad that you did, really driving productivity.
So is DHL, this is very, very interesting, Mark. Is DHL building some of their own AI layers as well? Or are you using off-the-shelf tools?
Oh, no, we built some on our own. And the first effective use case of AI within the organization that I serve came out of legal in partnership, of course, with IT. But it was just a brilliant collaboration, and it is really, really paying dividends for us now.
Beautiful. In 2 to 3 years, how do you see the job of a GC changing with the AI?
Oh gosh, it's not just going to be in 2 to 3 years, but I think even sooner than that, if it's not happening now, right? The GC of, quote, the future isn't going to be the legal advisor. Not at all. And humor me a little bit as a little bit later I'll talk about the GC's experience that I had when I was a young lawyer. A GC of the next 2 to 3 years of the future is going to be a business operator who delivers legal services. I firmly believe that.
What do you mean by that? If you can explain that.
Yeah. Well, you've got two parts of a law department. You've got that part of the law department that has a traditional will not change. You're here to service the legal needs of the company. You have lawyers and paralegals and other professionals doing just that, providing legal support and services. Then you have the second part, the business of law. You have the budget you manage. You have the internal and the external costs that you manage. You see the risks throughout the organization and what they cost the organization. And I think that the General Counsel and CLOs that have a focus, which is my primary focus, which is my primary role, is to help the company maximize their profitability. Not to solve legal problems, that's part of it, but to maximize profitability. By identifying risks, partnering with other people in the organization to quantify what those risks will cost, and finding new and effective ways to mitigate that risk as well. That is part of operating a business. It's no different than what people do when they are, in fact, operating a business, whether it's a window cleaning business or whether it's a manufacturing business. You have multiple elements associated with it. You have monies that you have been granted to spend because of the budget that you've been given, and you have to manage it judiciously so that you can help maximize the profitability of the organization. But I'm seeing it even in the time that I have been with DHL, where we have gone through some shifts among our board of directors and our C-suite as well. And the expectations, rightfully so, are, look, you are managing an awful lot of the spend that comes through this organization, And we want to make sure that you're doing it effectively, not with your lawyer hat on, but with your business hat. And that's not going to change for organizations.
So this is beautiful, Mark. So let's say a budget is assigned to you, let's say of $50 million. Your job is not just to ensure you spend 30 out of 50, but how do you also help other business teams make more money?
Well, for one, take, for example, the business development, the sales team, where we are drafting and negotiating all of their contracts. We see the customer disputes, we see the claims that come in, where we're sitting down with them and saying, guys, look, we have now had the opportunity to take your contracts over the past 2 years. We've leveraged them through the various technology that we have. And here are the things that we feel we need to do differently, not only operationally, because they're costing us money, resulting in claims, but if we took a different approach with the customer in our negotiation that went down this path, we're going to find ourselves mitigating a lot of our risk. And that's just taking information that we have that if we didn't take this holistic tie-it-all approach and just looked at everything in their own file by file, and didn't link things together, we'd never be in a position of being able to do so. Traditionally, that's what lawyers did. Matter came in, you closed it, you closed the file, and you went on to something else. Most effective lawyers, whether you're in a law firm, whether you're a young lawyer in a corporate law department or more seasoned like me, is tying all those things together so that you have something that you can guide the business based on data to a decision that's ultimately in their best interest.
Beautiful. This is gold, Mark. Thank you for sharing this with us. Tell us that, do junior lawyers lose opportunity or gain leverage with AI?
Oh, you're going to gain leverage.
But when you said that you're gonna become and your team gonna become 50% more efficient, which means you will hire 50% less people.
Nope. Oh, gosh, no.
Okay.
No. What's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
is the work that people pick up because they are more efficient that historically went out to external counsel, that's come back in.
So in that case, less and less work will go to outside counsel.
Yeah. Right now, Amit, it's reported 54% of all legal work in North America are now handled in-house. 54%.
Mm.
That's huge. And I believe that that will continue to grow.
Mm. Mm. What will you go to outside counsel for?
Well, we will always have to have them as our most trusted partners, right? Litigation, that will continue to happen. Our transactional work, M&A work, et cetera. I already shared with you one of the biggest mistakes I made. I'm not going to make that mistake again. But even if it wasn't me that was in the role here at DHL, I feel the expertise of outside counsel who can cover every issue associated with an M&A deal like we can. That's important. Bankruptcies, but the company litigation, advice in entering into a new market where we have no experience, et cetera. That general counsel trusted advice is still going to continue. AI is never going to replace me calling up Rob or Judy or Joe, an external counsel, and saying, I just need to talk to you. I trust your judgment. Help me think through this. AI is not going to do that. AI might give me the data that says, hey, you've got 50 claims. Here's how much you paid, right? But it's not going to be able to tell me, and here's what you need to change in your operation. That is that advice that AI will never replace, and I think the role for external counsel will only continue to grow that.
If you had to restart your career in 2026, there's so much of AI around, Mark, and you were a 26-year-old, how would you restart your career in 2026?
Well, the first thing that I would do is what most 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year people do not do. Even law students don't do. For heaven's sakes, it's not difficult to figure out who this Smolik guy is. I'm on LinkedIn. Just Google my name, Google anybody's name that is within an organization, and have the courage to reach out. 2 weeks ago, you saw this on a LinkedIn post. A gentleman, Marvin Tador, I had no idea who he was. He reached out to me. And I reached back out. And I reached back out because I said, this young man has the courage to reach out to me, which is great. And if he has that kind of courage, I want to talk to him. And I did. And then you saw the post. And he ended up with 9,900 some impressions coming out of that. So hopefully it opened a floodgate up for him. But I want people to have the courage. Don't be afraid to reach out. I hope I don't open the floodgates here. But if people that are listening to this say, I want to talk to the guy just to learn, get a little advice. And more importantly, network, folks. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I was at Safelight is I was so enthralled with the job. It was my first law department GC leadership position. That's all I did. I never went to industry events. I never networked. Wasn't until I got here. And I realized when I left Safelight and I was going to DHL, boy, I don't have the network that I need. So I vowed that don't let that happen. A network is the best investment that you can make in yourself, and take the time to do it. And don't be afraid to reach out to people, even those that you assume she or he will never talk to, because you never know. When that opportunity like Mr. Tator came up, and he and I have been connected.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And what human skills will be more valuable in AI world?
The most important is the connection with people. I think you and I have a connection here. We didn't know each other before this, right? But the ability to just have a candid conversation and never lose sight of who you are, where you came from. And oh my gosh, humility. Gosh, I see it in business. I see it in legal. It's the lawyer who can't walk through the door because their head's so big, because they're so full of themselves. Nobody wants to deal with those kind of people. And you hear people say when they're asked, hey, I've got this great interview coming up, or I want to talk to so-and-so, any advice? And the first thing that some of the more seasoned people say is, be yourself. Never lose sight of it, because boy, people can see right through it. So always be yourself. Never lose sight of the humility. Never be afraid to let the team shine instead of you. Because it did take me an awful lot of time to realize when I was at the various board meetings that I'd been at for the past, since I've been a GC now, long time. Let's just put it long time. Is people are not judging you just by your individual performance. They are judging you in your opportunities for advancement, career, etc., based on how you interact with people. Because nobody, I can't remember a single instance, even when we had interviewed scores of people to come through my organization, and we have interview panels with people on them where people are saying, oh, brilliant lawyer. Nobody talks about that. They say, you know what? I could see myself working with her or with him. So it is those soft skills. It is how you handle yourself. It is looking at somebody in the eye. It is shaking their hand. It is making sure that you are appropriately poised for the occasion. I learned some advice from a recruiter. I'll say her name, Deb Ben Cannon at Major Lindsay in Africa. One of the best that are out there, that posted an article the other day on LinkedIn about how many people come to interviews, even for some very senior level legal positions, in sweatsuits, not prepared, not being cleanly groomed, etc. Folks, you're creating a perception in every opportunity that comes across your way. Take them seriously. Take them as the opportunity, because you never know what's going to happen. I can guarantee you that some of the folks that Deb has that impression about, she wrote off. She's not going to want to invest time in them as well. So never lose sight of the image and that perception that you're creating.
Yeah, somebody told me every meeting matters, every appearance matters, everything matters.
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. If you could coach a 20, so do you coach your son who's a lawyer, who's a partner at a law firm? Do you coach him?
Well, try not to. When he was a young kid, I coached his baseball team, and I coached our younger son's baseball team as well, right? But I learned long ago that putting them in a position of succeeding on their own and experiencing the value of, I did this, I accomplished this on my own, is tremendous. Oh, there's been plenty of opportunities on it where, whether it's working on a home improvement project, because I'm a long ago carpenter, where I've been teaching the boys and they are brilliant at what they do. And I'm watching them do their things, whether it's in the workshop or whatever it might be. And I know there's a way that I would do it differently. You just kind of sit back and say, you know what? You may do it differently, but let them have the satisfaction of saying, look at what I did. And that's important. So coach them, yes, but somewhat indirectly. There's an awful lot of folks that I do serve as mentors to throughout the industry, and it's very, very gratifying. Just kind of listening to what they want to accomplish and then providing some perspective as well. But I think the most effective coach is the one where people are hearing what you are sharing in the form of experience or stories and what have you, and saying, you know what, I can see the point. And they end up coaching themselves.
This is beautiful. My daughter is 14-year-old. I was telling her something and she said, "Can you give me space for experience?" I was like, "Okay, all right." Space for I was like, I didn't even hear this word. Can you give me space for experience? I was like, okay, interesting.
Right.
Yeah. If a younger GC is watching this right now, what mistake would you advise them not to make?
Mistakes not to make. The ones I made. I should say right. Don't not ever. Don't not double negative. Network, 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 network. You're going to find that it is lonely at the top. It really is. But it becomes a whole lot lonelier. That I have very good English, but it does become a lot less lonelier. If you have the opportunity to send a text or an email to a friend who's a GC at another organization and say, hey, you got a minute? And you know your network is effective when they respond, not right now, but how about later tonight? Okay. And just having the opportunity to bounce ideas that may be harebrained to you and maybe harebrained to somebody else is invaluable. But that is why the networking opportunity is so invaluable to me. I can't tell you how many times I've done that
Mm.
and been very, very glad that I did. Because when I reach out to some of these guys who are GCs at some of the largest public companies that are there and realize that the way I was thinking is exactly how they would think, or maybe vice versa, or contrarian, you know, it's helped me, it's helped me make better decisions.
Mm, mm. My last question to you, Mark, is in the US, lawyers work very hard. They do a lot of sacrifices as well. They will miss a spouse event or a son's birthday party or a daughter's birthday party. Do you think lawyers in the US are paying too much for their money?
Yeah, to a certain extent. To a certain extent. I mean, gosh, we've been talking about burnout in the legal industry in the US now, for every year since I got out of law school. That has not changed. And um, the way that I have gone about it, and I think that it's important for people who are listening, is as exciting as it may be to go work for an AmLaw 5 or 25 or whatever it may be with six-figure salaries right out of school, especially when you have a lot of debt. You know, if your means to an ends are, I want to get out from underneath that debt and I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and I'm going to go through a very, very challenging way of life for the next 5, 6, 7 years to pay off that debt and get myself back on my feet. Okay, you got a goal, right? But make sure you have those goals as well. Make sure that ultimately, once you get through whatever initial challenge, such as what I've just explained, you find an organization where your intuition is telling you this culture is aligned with how I think, how I operate, and what I'm looking for. I can't tell you how important that is. People don't ask the right questions in interviews. They don't ask, tell me a little bit about your perspective of the culture. They ask one person that, but they don't ask the 3 or 4 other people. Don't be afraid to ask the same questions. Don't ever come out of an interview as an interviewee not firmly understanding, at least based on the discussion points, what the perspective of the people that you are interviewing with said of the culture of the organization. And then go do your own homework. Find out, is the CEO under investigation? Is there something else going on? You can do that to the public, but do your homework, folks. I know it's exciting to get that first job and to say, look, I'm making this or I'm making that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you do get your feet underneath you and you're established, you're going to find that the most important decision you can make in your career is getting fit with the right culture in an organization.
Beautiful, Mark. We have got tons of wisdom from you today on networking, on building relationship, on being true to yourself, on being yourself, on doing what you said you will do. So many things on AI. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for being so authentic and so real and sharing your experiences with your personal experiences, your personal issue about your ankle. All these stories which you told us today were marvelous, beautiful. We learned big deal, great deal from them, and everybody listening to this conversation will can use this and fly in their careers fast without making the mistake that you have made, and then also learning from the wisdom that you have given us today. Thank you so much, Mark, for the beautiful, beautiful wisdom that you've given us today.
Well, it was an honor. Thank you as well. And to all of those folks that are listening, if you want to take me up on an offer to get connected, I might be the right person, but I can tell you I know an awful lot of other people that could very well be. So never forget the value of the network.
Beautiful, beautiful, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.